I just don't think anybody expects someone to walk into a police station and instigate a gunfight, and yet here we are, 2023. Hi friends, welcome to today's bonus badge cam lesson here at Active Self-Protection. It's a bonus one again today, apparently. I'm your host, John Correa.
Bonus badge cam. I'm your co-host, Mike Willover. Today's video comes to us from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Mountain Man Medical has name brand proven trauma medical supplies with a price match guarantee to ensure you get the right gear at the right price. Check them out at get-asp.com/mountainman.
The man walking up to the counter here, his best friend died in a holding cell at this precinct house a couple of days before. And so he comes up to the counter and asks, the officer who's on duty there to come up. He has a .40 caliber handgun in his waistband, and if you read the news stories that I've linked in the description, he was hoping that when he started shooting at them that they would shoot him and end his life. We have some audio here, so let's listen in to what happened.
Good.
Thankfully, of all those shots, no one was hit. One officer returned fire, and that drove the man out of the lobby of the precinct, and he ran off into the neighborhood. Officers, of course, gave chase. We're going to see the first and second incident of them finding him. First officer is going to fire at him and not hit him, but that's going to drive him into the backyard of a house where they're going to encounter him for the final time.
Drop the gun! Drop the gun! Nice to the zone! Shots fired! Shots fired!
Here's where the backyard is, where they're going to encounter him for the final time. We have more audio.
Drop the gun! Drop the gun!
You're gonna stay with us now.
Come on!
Hey, other suspects.
Is that the gun? Is that the gun?
Anybody else
Okay.
with you?
Don't touch it.
Right there. Anybody else with you? No? This right arm here.
Do you have the tourniquet?
Get a tourniquet on his right arm. Or his left arm. Here. I'm grabbing his ID. I'm grabbing his wallet. Take his ID.
Everyone okay? Stop watch.
Yeah, we're good.
His gun. Yep.
This is a picture of the firearm that he was carrying, and he did take multiple shots with that. Nobody hit anything. He was hit multiple times by the officers in the backyard. He lived through that and is now facing a host of charges. I mean, I guess if you carry a gun for a living, you got to be ready in any given moment that, hey, I got to flip a switch mentally. And I don't know that a whole lot of people working at the home office are doing that.
People aren't expecting someone to roll on the entire police department.
Yeah. Mike, I just don't think anybody thinks, hey, you know what? Somebody's going to come into the precinct house and want to have a gunfight with us. But I think, unfortunately, that's kind of the world we live in now, that sometimes this suicide by cop idea shows up like this.
Yeah, this is a unique one, John. This guy had a particular beef with this particular department because he felt that something untoward had happened to his friend at a holding cell, and I understand the feeling of losing a friend and being upset about it. This is not the way to handle it, obviously. We talk all the time, John, about people not being cops, starting their shift and not knowing what is in store for them. This is one of those things that's extremely rare. I think you tend to get a little bit in code yellow when you're in the station, like, okay, I'm pretty safe here. Unless I have a prisoner, I got to watch that guy or gal or whatever. But you have to always kind of be a little bit on guard. If you're in uniform as a law enforcement officer, you have a target on your back. I don't want you to be paranoid, but I want you to always be ready and just assume everyone you interact with potentially is trying to hurt you and act accordingly. Don't be, completely paranoid, but be always in a state of at least a little bit of readiness and ready to respond if something like this does happen.
Yeah, and listen, that's not being paranoid. That's simply paying attention to your world and radically accepting reality, which is part of emotional fitness, right? We see the officer here have FIBSA, that fudge I'm being shot at, because he hears the gunshot go off. Now you got to go to work. You got to be able to flip that switch, and we see plenty of law enforcement officers do it, private citizens as well. And so even in the precinct house, hey man, something weird goes down, I can flip that switch to defense mode and go to work. Now, one thing that I'm going to say this officer here kind of did is he gets down, gets his gun out, love that. but then he pops up right where he was. So he pops up in the same place again. Guy shoots at him, thankfully misses to our right, the perp's left, so because that low left push affects an awful lot of people. But I think this is an odd thing to say. Of course, that desk is not, it's concealment, not cover, but not to pop up in the same place. Get a couple hard steps if possible to pop up in a different place so that you're at advantage, because when you pop up in the same place, he's expecting you there.
Yeah, this is, again, you know, and I'm sure John will say the same thing. We don't want to be too hard on this guy. He wasn't expecting to get shot at his own front counter, but if you find yourself in this position, whether it's at the front counter of the police station or over the counter during a robbery at a grocery store, just remember, if you have to duck initially, that's a really common human reaction, is to get small, get out of the way. Once you've realized, okay, well, I'm the police, I need to engage with this person, then it's time to A, pop back up, be in a different place, and C, try to neutralize this threat, because no one's coming to save you. You're the police. I mean, this is one of those things, like the only time the police need more police is when they call SWAT. Well, this is not, SWAT's not going to be there in time to handle this, so he needs to get in there and handle it. And part of that means not being predictable. So I wouldn't have minded seeing him crawling all the way to the side beyond one of those walls and popping out while he's already standing to give himself a little bit of an advantage, hopefully. But again, we won't be too hard on him. No one's expecting, you know, someone to come into the police station and start shooting, so he handled it fairly well.
Yeah, and I do think mindset here and emotional fitness says, I want to be the hunter, not the rabbit, right? I don't want to be hiding and waiting for what he's going to do next. I want to proactively say, listen, I got real small so that I wouldn't get hit. Then I get real big because I'm the most dangerous person in this room and I'm better than you at this issue, at gunfighting, because I'm super confident in my abilities. Now, again, if it's just officers on one side and our perp on the other side and there's nobody else involved, then maybe you slow play this and you sit behind cover and you wait and see what goes down. But there are innocent people in that lobby. And part of accepting the role of law enforcement is that you are the one that everyone else calls to run to the danger. And so officers, I think you've got to be willing to do that. And I get it, these guys in the precinct are having a hard time of that. And again, we've said this many times, I don't want to give them too hard a time, but sometimes you got to check your heart and go, nope, I am 911 and I'm coming here.
As I like to say, John, you know, as a police officer, as a sheriff's deputy, whatever, you have to give yourself permission in the moment to realize, okay, what I'm doing is goofy, what I'm doing is not appropriate to the situation, and quickly change your behavior, change what you're doing. So if you're one of these officers who's crouched down, you know, in the fetal position behind the counter, understand, I get why you're in that position. I understand I've been shot at. It's not fun, it sucks, and it's scary. But at some point you need to realize, okay, well, there's people out here that are depending on me. There's people in the lobby. There's civilian staff who can't defend themselves. And as you said, John, I am the biggest, most proficient person at violence in this room. Let me go dispense violence to end this threat. And that just kind of didn't happen. Now, they didn't have a lot of time to make that decision. This young man didn't stick around in the lobby for very long. But I would hope, had this continued, that would have happened pretty quickly.
Yep, and again, that's part of emotional fitness. You build that by doing hard things and by being confident in your skill set and having the skill set to be confident in it. Now, the officer who steps out here of his car, he's kind of, you know, sees this guy, and when he gets his gun out and on target, I'm zooming it in here, and this guy is, I'm going to guess, about 100 yards away. If you look at the houses, he's like 6 houses down the road here. And even though those are small yards and little kind of, you know, city houses, he is a long way away. And with an iron-sighted pistol, Mike, there is no way that you are going to hit something from 100 yards away unless you are an incredible marksman. And number one, I think this argues for a pistol-mounted optic on all police officers' pistols. Number two, I don't know why he didn't close the distance and maybe choose to use the patrol vehicle, Mike.
Yeah, use the car. I think we say that a lot around here, but this is a pretty clear example of that. Now, John knows as well as anyone, we're looking at these badge cam videos. These are like 480p potato cams, and we're at a distance, so it's really tough to judge this distance, but this is, I mean, 100 yards probably, it's at least 50 yards. 50 yards under stress when you're heaving and your adrenaline's going with iron sights at a target that can move is a really unlikely shot to make. So I think closing the distance to either get a better shot or closing the distance with the vehicle to strike him with the vehicle to get him to stop what he's doing to change his behavior, or if nothing else, having a patrol rifle with an optic on it, maybe a magnifier, would have been really handy right here. This is Not a difficult shot at all with an AR platform rifle that you're confident with, you're confident in its zero, and you're confident that you're going to hit what you're aiming at because it's a rifle.
Yeah, and I really think that patrol officers should have a patrol rifle with them. I mean, I don't see why in this day and age that more departments aren't authorizing that, providing it, or at least letting officers bring their personally owned carbines. That, of course, as we've seen in other badge cams, need to be properly secured and all that, because a 100-yard shot with a patrol rifle on a person-sized target, it's not an easy shot, but it's certainly a doable shot. So listen, being appropriately tooled, incredibly important. Now, he doesn't get him there, so then they got to get in a little further. Next thing I really want to kind of say here is he gets back in the patrol cruiser, and he's still got his gun in his hand. So you saw him there, gun in his right hand, reaches over with his left hand to kind of put the car back in park. This is a real safety issue and concern. You want to put that gun back in your holster, back in the bucket. You got this big offset bucket outside the waistband, offsetting those things to be able to put it away quickly, because when it's time to drive, and as Tuco says, when it's time to shoot, not combining the two is smart.
Yeah, there's a reason, as you said, you call it a bucket, John. That's probably appropriate. Most agencies carry some kind of Safariland, usually an SLS, at least I hope so, not an ALS, thank God. And those things are big. The opening is really wide to give you plenty of room under stress to reholster that gun. And all you can do is, as you said, is literally drop it in there. You drop it in there, it's secure. There's no other thing you have to do to get it secured in the holster. It secures itself. It locks itself in place, and it's very difficult for someone else to get out. But fortunately, with SLS holsters, getting that gun back out is lightning fast. It's faster than any other method of drawing that I'm aware of. It's nice and slick. The defeat the retention is really quick. So yeah, let's try not to drive with our gun in our hand. I know it's a warm fuzzy that if I get shot at I can shoot back, but what are you going to do? Shoot through the windshield? We've talked about that a million times. That's not a great option. So put the gun away, close the distance, consider using the car as a weapon rather than a firearm.
Yeah, and I love the idea that, listen, I'm not going to fire out of a moving vehicle. And so that time that I'm getting out of the car, I can also double that to get my gun back out of the holster. So now the officers do finally get this guy kind of, pegged down in a spot where I've got maybe a 20-25 yard shot. That's a much more doable shot with a pistol. I do notice here that our officer, he's got a bunch of snow in his hand, so he probably fell at one point and kept his gun in his hand, didn't have a negligent discharge. Good for him on that. You got to have all the grip here, all the sights and all the trigger. And the fact that I can see a whole bunch of snow between his hands here means we got to work on grip, because grip is the master, sight set the pace, trigger is the servant. And officers, hear me, your department issued training is for liability. It is not for proficiency. If you're going to get proficient at these kinds of shots, you're going to have to take that on your own. And you want to do that because it might save your life or the life of somebody else.
Yeah, not to pick too many nits here, John, but I don't think that anyone practices, okay, what if I fall in the snow and there's snow in my support hand? But you can practice getting things out of your hands. So as we talk about all the time, a clipboard, a flashlight, a baton, a taser, get it out of your hands and get your hands clear to shoot. When you're having to shoot as a law enforcement officer, your only job at that point is to concentrate on A, am I legally justified in shooting? And B, am I doing all the right things to get effective shots on target and not miss, because misses don't end gunfights. With that said, I want to go back real quick to earlier, behind the counter. That's where force-on-force training really comes into play. If you're doing proper force-on-force training with sim guns or some kind of actual projectile that actually hurts when you get hit with it, that's a good way to inoculate yourself to that stress and potential violence. I wanted to make sure I pointed that out, John, as well. Moving on.
And I really think that simunition training and that force-on-force training is super important. Getting off the square range and feeling that adrenaline of, oh man, I'm about to eat an angry Skittle at 300 feet per second and it's gonna hurt and leave marks on me, amps the emotional level up enough that it really kind of changes things. And now, once they put this guy down, I do want to say really kudos to these officers. This guy just shot at them a whole bunch. They don't know his state of mind. All they know he's trying to kill cops and trying to kill people in this lobby. And as soon as he goes down and they recognize he doesn't have a gun on him, they are going to get this guy into cuffs, and then they are going to start rendering aid to him. And once they put him down, their mission is to stop that threat and then render aid to somebody that's in custody and try to save his life, and they did that. I think that that's absolutely commendable. I think at the end of the day, I think both of us agree that these officers, okay, we've got some technique issues. All right, fine. But their heart shone through. They handled what they needed to do in the moment, drove the threat off, handled it, and then treated him like a human being. That's the way to cover your ass.